Welcome to our continuing series where we discuss the topic of political division and the potential for national divorce with thinkers, scholars, lawyers, professors, anybody that's able to be thoughtful and participate in an honest conversation. Today, we have one question and one answer from STEPHAN Helgesen. He's a former diplomat, worked in 30 countries, and he has also wrote for USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and the New York Post. We're going to look at his recent article called The Not So Great American U-Turn. Let's get right into it. Mr. Helgesen is a diplomat or a retired diplomat who's worked in 30 years. And this was a quote from one of the articles we're going to get to. Our Civil War happened 6 generations ago, and the prospect of experiencing another one is unthinkable and frightening, but there are lessons to be learned, and one of them is to not tribalize ourselves. So he's saying, if you want to avoid another civil war, don't break yourself into tribes like red and blue. STEPHAN Helgesen is a retired career US diplomat who lived and worked in 30 countries for 25 years during the Reagan, G.H.W. Bush, Clinton, and G.W. Bush administrations. He's the author of 12 books, 6 of which are on American politics, and he's written over 1,200 articles. So we asked one question of Mr. Helgesen, the former U.S. diplomat, and it was based upon this article, The Not So Great American U-Turn, in the New Mexico Sun. Whether we like it or not, tribalism is on the rise. And instead of e pluribus unum, out of one a many country, we are experiencing the opposite, which is taking America on a U-turn away from values homogeneity. Remember that, values homogeneity. Let's write that down. Values homogeneity. That's going to come into play. The path is dangerous because it's a departure from the founders' vision to build a strong and resilient society through national unity. We will never find true strength by concentrating on our differences, and we should never substitute equality with equity or identity politics, neither should we replace a power structure that relies on a constitution for its lawmaking with a plebiscite-based democracy compromised of constantly competing special interests. Our Civil War happened 6 generations ago. The prospect of experiencing another one is unthinkable and frightening, but there are lessons to be learned, and one of them is to not tribalize ourselves. That's the quote in full and from this article. Similar to this article in the American Thinker, slightly different at the end. We must remember that history is both a carousel and a roller coaster. Our Civil War took place only 6 generations ago, and for most of us, the prospect of experiencing one is unthinkable. If we are to be honest with ourselves, we must take that roller coaster back to the time in American history and look at the divisions that existed in our society then and the forces that were working to exaggerate them and divide the country. If we do this, we will understand why the tribalization of men and countries, there it is, tribalization, is dangerous and never preferable to achieving national unity that is based upon a common values that apply to every demographic group. Once again, referencing common values. Finally, there was this other article in the American Thinker on common senselessness. Who are these people? Who are these people? Written very recently. The left has wagged the tail of our society for too long. We have allowed it to spread its lies through an unholy alliance with the media, academia, and the deep state, and with special interest groups to the detriment of our traditional American values. The left has truly shown itself to be the embodiment of uncommon senselessness, and we must stop enabling it. We have to stop enabling the left because they control society for too long, and it's to the detriment of traditional American values that allowed for national unity. Well, I was able to talk to Professor Helgesen very briefly, and I asked him this question. I only wanted to ask you one question. You said last year, our Civil War happened 6 generations ago, and the prospects of experiencing another one is unthinkable and frightening, but there are lessons to be learned, and one of them is to not tribalize ourselves. You have to work in 30 countries. Based upon your experience working in 30 countries, do you believe that political division in America, tribalism, is so bad now that it could result in a second and another civil war? So I asked the diplomat who's worked in 30 countries, do you believe division in America tribalism, as you say, which is bad in multiple articles, is so bad now that it could result in another civil war. Remember, this guy is a diplomat and he has worked in 30 other countries. So he's probably seen a little bit of civil war in other countries. This is what the professor had to say from STEPHAN HELGESEN. We've removed his email. We are already in the midst of a cultural civil war. No one wants a second civil war in the U.S. That would involve bloodshed, period. Having said that, when we lose faith in our institutions and our institutions do not respect us or follow the law, that breakdown in trust can lead to a national divorce. And as you know, some divorces can get acrimonious. We are already in a cultural civil war. No one wants a violent second civil war. However, we have lost faith in our institutions and respect for the law. This breakdown in institutional trust can lead to national divorce because we no longer have common values for national unity. And as you know, some divorces can get acrimonious. So you go down this path of national divorce because you do not have common values and national unity, it could get bad. Should it? No. Will it for sure? We don't know. But it can, as some divorces get acrimonious. Already in a cultural civil war, it can absolutely get best. The major reason it's happening is we've lost faith in our institutions. We have no national values. We have no national institutions. And there we have no national cohesion. I hope that answers your question. Well, we took this quote here, and we recently did an interview with Scott Powell, a PhD, and he said almost the exact same thing as STEPHAN HELGESEN, the former US diplomat. In fact, we showed Scott Powell, the PhD, this quote from Helgesen, and we said, how do you think about this? In this episode here with interview with Scott Powell, PhD, he said he completely agreed with the diplomat Helgesen. There is a lack of universal agreed upon values in America. That doesn't mean we can support common institutions. Since we can't support common institutions, we don't have faith in common institutions. And since we don't have faith in common institutions that were the pillars that kept the country together, we are looking at national divorce. So STEPHAN HELGESEN and Scott Powell, PhD, basically said the exact same thing. We don't have national values. Therefore, we can't agree on what our institutions are. Therefore, we don't have faith in our institutions. And once you don't have faith in the institutions, those were the things keeping America cohesive. So you will have national divorce because we don't have faith in our institutions. Some divorces can get bad. So wanted to point out, we asked the diplomat what he thought of national divorce. We're already there because of loss of faith in our institution, because of a loss of faith of values, as he explained here, and here, and here. And because of that, we could lead to a national divorce. And as you know, some divorces can get acrimonious. We had asked Scott Powell, PhD, about what the diplomat had said. And I got to tell you, it was a good interview, but it wasn't exactly positive because there was a lot of not good. There was a lot of Professor Powell admitting there's not really good answers for these questions. Like, things do not look good. It was a great interview. He did awesome answering, but ultimately we were coming to how do we fix the country? How do we turn it around? And he was doing a lot of deep breathing. Like, he's like, oh God, I don't know if we can. And his reason why Scott Powell felt national divorce is coming is because he saw the exact same thing as STEPHAN HELGESEN. No common values. Therefore, we can't have common institutions. Therefore, the institutions rot. And those were the things holding us together. So now nothing will hold us together until we can somehow come back and agree on a set of universal values, which in this interview with Scott Powell, I pointed out how that's probably never going to happen. And he didn't concede, but he did a lot of, oh God, that looks bad as the response. So again, this was our interview. One question based upon this article with STEPHAN HELGESEN, the former diplomat, based upon this quote. And we asked another scholar that, and he agreed with his analysis of where America is going. That's it. This is the quote itself. We hope that you found that this is informative. And this is from Stephan Helgesen. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.